Right, so everybody, welcome to part 2 of the Open Refine for Health Sciences series. This is part 2 of the series focused on Open Refine, and today's session is about transformations. This series of classes is based on material from the Carpentries, which is known for live coding. So if you were able to download and install OpenRefine on your device, we ask that you try to follow along, if possible, with some of the live coding that we'll be doing. Today, we have two instructors who are here to support your learning. That would be first me, Javier Martinez Rodriguez. I am the program specialist at NNLM's National Center for Data Services, and I'm joined by Christine Hislop, who is the Data Services Librarian at the University of Maryland, Baltimore's Health Sciences and Human Services Library. Getting ahead of myself. So just for a reminder of the series overview, we had a session 1 last week, which was an introduction to OpenRefine, and now we are on session 2, which is all about some transformations that you can do using this software. For an overview of this session, we will be working on launching and reopening an OpenRefine project. We will be introducing transformations, and we will be writing transformations. We will also be talking a little bit about transforming strings, numbers, dates, and booleans, and we will be working on exporting your data after you are done with your project. For this session's learning objectives, we will be working on applying transformations to strings, numbers, dates, and booleans to programmatically edit data and prepare data for analysis. In order to do that, we will need to describe common transformations for strings and numbers, create and run transformations based on Boolean values, and modified or change format of dates. We will also working on writing expressions using General Refined Expression Language, or GREL, also GREL, depending on how you want to say that. So we will explain what that is conceptually, and then we will practice writing transformations using GREL. So now let's talk about opening a project, and I am going to work with you on this. So hopefully you can see some of my, you can see my screen here. And, hopefully everyone was able to download and install OpenRefine. I will be using version 3.9.3 on Windows. If you weren't able to install OpenRefine for this session, that's okay. We just encourage you to follow along as best as you can, and you can take notes of things to try on your own after we share the recording and the slides. The slides that we will share also have some key points that we're covering about different features and the tasks that you can do in OpenRefine. So I'm going to start by launching OpenRefine, and just as a reminder and as information for those of you who were not able to join us last week, we would do that using this blue diamond shortcut, and then it will open on a web browser. Here I already have OpenRefine open, so you can see that this is the landing page that you would get. Note that this is in a web browser, but it's not actually, you should know that it's not actually connected to the internet. It just uses the web browser as an interface. So then if you were already with us last week for part 1 of this class, you would have already created a project in OpenRefine. You can actually open this past project as you left it by clicking on the left side menu. You can click on Open Project here, and you can see first that I've tidied this up for you, and then you can see that here's the last project that I worked on, and that would be this project on, and I can click on the name of this project to access what I did before. One of the things that we also talked about last week was about exporting your entire OpenRefine project as a file, which you can upload back into OpenRefine by clicking on Import Project. You can click Choose File and then navigate to the file that you would like to open. So, and then you can import your project that way. You can also import a project from a URL if you have access to that. That can be really helpful if you want to share projects with collaborators. And just keep in mind that in order to open a project in OpenRefine, you need one of these two file formats, .tar or .tar.gz. I'm not going to import a project right now, but I will open my project, our project from last week. Right here, so you can see that it's very easy to do. Also, it is the same data set. And not my case right now, but you would be able to see on yours if you did this that you would have all of the same undo, redo steps. But what I'm going to do is actually show just for some of the folks that were not able to join us, last week, I want to show how you can create a new project. So I'm going to go actually back to the main screen in OpenRefine by clicking my new diamond up here on the upper left corner. And then I'm going to create a project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the file and I'm going to choose a data set. I have my data set here for session 2. You should have received an email with all of this information and you can download the data set there. So I'm just going to click open here and I'm going to click next. Great, so as you can see, OpenRefine is going to give you a preview of your data set here. There's also some information down here with essentially a summary of your text, of your data set, sorry. And you have a project name up here, which you can edit as you need to. I'm going to leave it like this. I'm satisfied with that project name, and then I can just click here on Create Project, and it will create a new project for me. So I'm going to stop the demo here, and we're going to talk a little bit about transformations. So last week we talked about facets, filters, and clusters, and those are OpenRefine's ways to offer relatively straightforward ways of getting an overview of your data and making changes where you want to standardize terms used to a common set of values. However, sometimes there will be changes you want to make that cannot be achieved in your way. Those types of changes can include, for example, splitting data that is in a single column into multiple columns. So for example, splitting an address into its different parts. Standardizing the format of data in a column without changing the values, so like removing punctuation or standardizing a date format. And also extracting a particular type of data from a longer text string, like finding an ISBN in bibliographic citations. So to support this type of activity, OpenRefine supports something called transformations, which are ways of manipulating the data in columns. Transformations are normally written in a special language called GREL, General Refined Expression Language, or GREL. To some extent, GREL expressions are similar to Excel formulas, although they tend to focus on text manipulation rather than numeric functions. There is full documentation for the GREL which is available in the OpenRefine help documentation, and there will be a link for that in some of the documents we send you after this. And this tutorial covers only a small subset of the commands that are available for in OpenRefine. So let's talk about some common transformations. Some transformations are used very regularly, so they are accessible to you directly through a drop-down menu. and so you don't have to type the GREL code directly. Some examples of those transformations are given here in this table with their GREL equivalents. So you can see how what GREL looks like for now, and we will be talking about how to use GREL later in this session. So you can see some of the common transformations like trimming, leading, and trailing white space, collapsing consecutive white space, and also changing the format of text to title case, to uppercase, or to lowercase. So now we are going to go back to OpenRefine, which again, we have up right here. And so one of the first exercise that we're going to do is that we are going to apply a transformation to the language column here in this data set. So the first thing I need to do is navigate to my language column. So I know that this is here to the right, and I can find it right here. So here's my language column, and what I want to do first is I'm going to inspect a little bit of the data there. In order to do that, I have to create a facet, and these are text values, so I'm going to create a text facet. You can see the data in this column here to the left, and one of the things that I notice is that some of the values have two languages in it, and there's a blank space in between them. So you can see it here in English French, English Italian, English Portuguese, English Spanish. So what I want to do is get rid of that white space. So in order to do that, I'm going to use a common transformation. So right here in my language column, I can use the drop-down menu right next to it. I can navigate to edit cells, and under the edit cells menu, there is a common transform menu. And these are all of the common transfers that we talked about, along with some other ones that you did not see in that table. So what I want to do is collapse consecutive white space to get rid of that. So I'm going to click that. And you can see now that there was a text transform 16 cells in the language column. You can also see here in my facet that those white spaces are now gone all over the data set. So just to recap that, you can go to the drop-down menu in the language column, edit cells, common transforms, collapse consecutive white space. So that is one of the common transformations that are available in OpenRefine. If you are following along and you did not see that any changes in your facet, you can also click here on the refresh button to make sure that all changes are visible. So now let's move on to our practice question number 1. So what we want to know is how many cells have extra white space in the publication type column. So we're going to pop that in the chat, and you can let us know how many of those, how many cells have extra white space in the publication type column. We will give you some time to work on that. Great. So I see some answers there, and I saw some folks saying that 1,316 cells were transformed. Um, that is correct, and I'm just going to quickly show how you get that number. So I'm going to close my language facet here to clean up my menu a little bit. I'm navigating to the publication type column, and I'm going to go again to the publication type. I'm going to create a text facet so I can review a little bit of my data. You can see right here that there's a lot of consecutive white space. So what I'm going to do is go to my drop-down menu, edit cells, common transforms, collapse consecutive white space, and you can see here that 1,316 cells were transformed in the publication type column when I applied that transformation. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to pop them in the chat or use the raise hand function. So now we're going to do another practice question, and we are going to apply another transformation. So the next practice question is using the common transform option to title case, change all the values in the title common to title case, and let us know how many cells were transformed. And I will also give you a little bit of time to work on that. And let us know how many cells were transformed when you apply this common transformation. Great. So I see that there are quite a bit of people saying that there were 3,176 cells that were transformed. That is correct, and I'm just going to demonstrate how we get that number again. So I have navigated to my title column. You can also see here very clearly that some of these values are in uppercase or all caps. So I am going to, again, use my title. Sorry, I'm just going to close that up. I can use I'm going to go to the drop-down menu next to my title column. I can create a text facet if I want to see. There's too many to display, so we can set a choice count limit, but it's very easy to see here right now that the change that we're going to do. So I'm going to go to my drop-down menu, edit cells, common transforms, and we're going to change to title case. And you can see right here that 3,176 cells were changed in the column title. Now, I do want to point something out here, which is if I go back, you can see, for example, here that there are all caps in this title that you probably need to keep. So just be careful when you're using common transformations because you will be changing all of your data at the same time. So you just want to make sure that you are doing that, you are using it carefully. But we're just going to go ahead and apply that for now. And you can see here this second value is now in title case. It is not in all caps. So the main takeaway for this section of this session is that common transformations are available through the drop-down menu options that are right next to the column name. So I just want to recap that if you click that menu and you go to edit cells and common transforms, you can see all of the options that are available here and apply them as needed. We saw a couple examples of this with collapsing consecutive white space and changing values to title case. So now we're going to be looking at more complex and specific transformations which Christine is going to be taking over.
Okay, thanks, Javier. Zoom ahead to, so we started to already talk about writing transformations using GREL. That's the general refine expression language. And as Javier has mentioned, it can be similar to Excel. It could be similar to formulas that you might see in Excel, or similar also to regular expressions if you've encountered those in programming languages. And Grell functions can be written in two kind of ways, so two formats. So the first one here you can see is where you have a value, and value here is like the original value, the starting value, dot function, and we're going to look at different kinds of functions. ToTitle case, ToDate are some of these functions. And then in parentheses, options, or these might be like, if you're used to other programming languages, arguments that we would put the different options we want to make change about the function. So examples of this first kind of format, you can see value.toTitleCase in parentheses. That's like the Grell expression that's happening underneath when we're doing the common transformation toTitleCase. And those parentheses are intentionally left empty because that's just running the default toTitleCase function. But then a second example here is looking at value.toDate, and that's going to be to change that toDate is to change the data type, which we'll talk more about. And in the parentheses, we've specified the date format. So that's another example of how that first syntax for writing a Grell expression. The second way to write a Grell expression is to do to start with the function, and then in the parentheses we would start with value, which is our starting value, and then the comma and the adding the arguments from in after in there, still within the parentheses. So again, these are very similar ways to write expressions, and we'll look at both of these today. But examples of that second kind of, the second syntax is, doing toTitleCase with parentheses value, and then for that we don't have a second argument, but we'll look at how we can put that in. And then the same with toDate. You can see it's written with toDate in parentheses value, comma, and then the date format. So let's make sure I covered everything there. And as I said, we'll be looking at both. Someone asked the question, is there a reason why someone would choose this format over the other? We will see kind of why sometimes it can be a little easier to use one format or the other, but it kind of also comes down to your preference. So I'm now going to share my screen with OpenRefine. Hopefully you're seeing my OpenRefine. Make sure I can still see things. So we're going to do some examples of these. And we're going to start by looking at our keyword heading column. And as we just said, toTitleCase, we could use a common transformation if we wanted to change this column to the toTitleCase. But we're gonna start to look at how we can write our transformations using the what's the expression box. So on the drop down for your column, you're still going to select, this time we're going to do Edit Cells Transform. And this opens this custom text transform on column box, and you can see it's the keyword heading column. And we have this expression box that it's already filled in value for us. Value, again, is standing in for the original value, is the value in each one of our cells, or in this particular column. We can see in this window we also get a preview of what our transformation will look like. And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but hopefully I'm trying to gesture where things are. But you can see the row number, the value that we're starting with, and then right now, because I haven't typed anything in this expression box, it's just showing me the value as it will be transformed. But just to help us navigate this, we also want to look, this preview tab is helpful for viewing what your transformation is going to look like. We also have the history, and for you this might look different because it'll be, it'll be what's on your device, but This can be useful because as we're typing expressions, they'll be saved in this history and we can easily reuse them from there, or we can also star transformations that we may want to use again. Which takes us to looking at the starred tab, and again, this is where you can star certain transformations that you're going to use over and over, can help you from having to type them over and over again. And then lastly, this help tab. This is really helpful because it is connected, it has reference information from the OpenRefine user manual, that link that was in the chat earlier, and it has a list of all the grel functions and a brief information on how to use them. Kind of gives you a little more information on what these different functions, how they work, and what are the different arguments or options that they have inside of them. And we're going to look at this shortly again later too. But for now, I'm going to go back to my preview tab and back into this expression box. And we're going to start to type, that function that we saw before, toTitleCase, with the parentheses. And we can see now that we've put this grel expression here, you'll also notice next to this expression box that it says no syntax error, and that's you do need to write a valid grel expression in this box, and it'll tell you if there's if it's not a valid expression. But now that we've put this in, it's actually showing in the preview window how it will be transforming our cells. So and you can see some cells are actually empty, they're null, they don't have any keyword headings in them, so there's nothing for the function to transform. But ones that have them, you can see that there's now the words in the keywords have been capitalized. We're going to click OK. And that transformed 882 cells in this column. So now we're going to look at another example. This time we're going to do another example looking at the mesh subject headings column. And we're going to follow many of the same steps, the drop-down box, edit cells, transform. And I also want to transform this column to title case. So if I start typing title case, or this is also a great time if you want to, you can look in your history and you'll see that this will be updated. The top one should be there to title case. You could also click reuse, and that'll actually fill in that transformation for you. But when I'm looking at my preview this time, you'll notice that not all the subject headings are being capitalized. That we have some are capitalized, but then it's not picking up and capitalizing the first letter in all these words. And this is because the toTitleCase function only capitalizes the first letter when it's the first character But we have this separator pipe or vertical bar that's between many of the subject headings in this column. So to the computer, to OpenRefine, it's seeing all of these as one word, because there's no spaces. So what we actually have to do before we can do toTitleCase is we want to replace this vertical separator bar with a space. So we're instead going to do, we're going to start typing in our expression box, value.replace. And for this function, for the replace function, it takes two options. We want to first we would need to put what we are replacing, which in this case is the separator bar or the vertical bar. This character on your keyboards, on my keyboard at least, it's above the Enter key, but it's set straight up and down. And then we're putting this in quotations as well, because that's again how the computer needs. We're not because that's how we have to write the function. So and then the second argument or option in this function is what we're replacing the first part with. So we're going to do a comma. I'm going to do a comma and a space. because I think that'll be a little more readable as well. And then I need my last parenthesis. And now in the, so now in my preview window, we can see that we've replaced everywhere that the vertical bar was appearing is being replaced with the comma and the space. And it also just helps make this a little bit more readable to the human eye. But you may notice, okay, so I'm going to save that. We're going to do that first as we're going to do this as a transformation. So we replaced everything. I'm going to click OK. That worked on the majority of our cells. And then now we still want to change this to title case. And I know I didn't mention before, but I saw in the chat that yes, it's very case sensitive. So we do have to do, when we're typing our function, it does have to be to with a capital T title case. And when we do title case, now in the preview window, when we've typed title case, we can see that more of our subject headings are being capitalized, but there are still many that are not. And these are ones that have this star character that appears before the first letter. And for this, I was getting a little stumped because it's like, well, how to do this. But I looked, this is a good place where it's very helpful to look in the help. So I encourage you to follow along, or you can look at the help on your own screens, or you can follow along here. But if we look in the help and we scroll down to where the to title case function is, we'll see that to title case has, and this gives a little narrative about what it's doing. But that you start with our string S, which string S, it's the string that we're starting with, what we've been using as value, and then the string delimiter, which is actually optional, but that's what we want to specify in here, that the delimiter has a star in it. So this is where yeah, you can read more about the to title case and the different functions in the help window. But for this example, or for this exercise, what we're going to do is I actually am going to write this using the other syntax, because that's it might be a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to do instead of value.toTitleCase, I'm going to do toTitleCase and then value, which is like my input, like the input string that we're starting with. And then the second argument here is going to be my delimiter, which is this comma, space, and star. And now, so we replaced the bar, our vertical bar, with the comma and the space. So that's what a delimiter is, like between different words. We have these delimiters, and we added the star now as part of this delimiter, so that it knows to capitalize it knows to capitalize the first letters of words that are starting with the star. So I'm going to click OK, and I probably should check, are people, can I get a thumbs up if you've been able to put in the, if you're with me? Okay, I'm seeing a few, great. So I'm going to click OK, and I can see how that transformed 2,774 of these cells. And as I'm scrolling through, I can see there's a lot more capitalized subject and mesh subjects headings. But I also, as I'm scrolling through, actually do notice that some are not been capitalized. And it's mostly, some of our values, some of our subject headings also have brackets around them. So this is our next practice exercise. We want you to write a transformation to transform the mesh subject headings that are written in brackets to the title case. And then you can also tell us how many cells were transformed. So Javier, I don't know if you can put that in the chat, or... So we're working on the same mesh subjects headings column. We're doing the two title case transformation. Okay, I'm starting to see some answers in the chat. This one is a little harder, so I'll also walk through the steps for this one. So we're using our drop-down menu. We're going to edit cells, transform. We have our expression. And actually, I'm going to go into my history and I'm going to copy the same transformation that we just used. So this was our two title case value, and then our delimiter, which is the comma and space and star. And this time I want to make sure that we're transforming anything that starts with a bracket. So I'm adding that bracket to our delimiter. But you might notice, and if you may have encountered this, or may have noticed, may have not noticed, that when I do this, it actually, if I take away the star, now everything that starts with a star is not going to be capitalized. I see here that entries that do start, or subject headings that do start with the bracket are going to be capitalized, but I've lost the star. So actually, we can add the star back in, and we can include both the star and the bracket because these are two different, it's adding it as part of the delimiters. So it's specifying that any things that are separated by this, separated by the comma, the space, the star, or the bracket, that they're going to be capitalizing the character that comes after that. I click OK, and okay, I got 2031 cells, but that's because I added the star. But I know in the chat most of you got 2,897. I'm going to run that one more time because I think why I got less that time is because I included the star. Actually, I think it's because I put the star in front of the bracket. But when I did it just the bracket, I got 2,897 cells, just what other people were getting in the chat as well. And yeah, it looks like someone did get it. Yeah, so I think it might have to do with like the order of the delimiters. So if we put the star after the bracket, then it looks like that time putting the star, I'm not exactly sure why it was different, but when I put the star after the bracket, I got 2,897 cells, the same as the number I got when I did it with the bracket. I think there are some subject headings that are fully in brackets. So that, because you'll also notice we transformed more cells than when we had done before, when we did just the star with just the star before. So I think that's because some cells only had brackets around them. All right, and then we're going to do one more. We're going to put one more of these. But before I move on, I just saw there was a question. Is there a reason why you would put the comma then the space? Because the comma and the space are part of the delimiter. So again, it's showing that between, it's like the space between these words. The space and the comma are part of that space between the words. That's what the delimiter is. It's used to delineate or to separate different words. I don't know if that fully answers that. Maybe someone can write in the chat a better answer, but yeah, but now I want to look at another one of our columns. We are looking at the database column. And this data set is a list of bibliographic records, articles from a search of two databases. And so I'm going to do database. I want to look just to get a sense of what's in this column. We see that there are articles in this data set from Embase and from Ovid Medline R. And this time we're going to look at how a transformation can extract part of a value from a cell. And we're going to use it to shorten the name, shorten the database name from Ovid Medline R to Ovid. So if we want to, again, make this a little bit shorter, we can use a transformation to do that. So on our database column, we can use our dropdown, edit cells, transform, brings open our transform, or opens our expression box, already has value filled in for us. And this time we're going to use the function get. And get is a function in OpenRefine that will return characters in a string based on their position in the string, starting from 0. So a string, we're going to look again at more data types after this. The string is what we've been working with throughout these classes, looking at text data. And what we can do with this function is we can ask it for the first 4 characters. Oh, and that's what right, I missed a step. So it's going to extract the first 4 characters, but I actually don't want to shorten Embase. I want to keep that fully, so I'm going to cancel out of here. And if you're following along, you want to select the Ovid Medline R facet so that we're just looking at the 2,152 rows that are from Ovid Medline. And then I want to do my transformation. Edit cells, transformation, value, .get, 0 and 4. And you can see in our preview window that this is going to shorten the name to just Ovid, the first four characters in each row. And I'm going to click OK. And now when I did this, it actually transformed all those cells, but they've disappeared because I had selected the Ovid Medline R facet. And you can see now that there's 0 records in this facet. And instead, they're all moved over to Ovid. Here, just the word Ovid by itself. I know last week we showed how you can edit things in the facet, but again, this is showing you that there's multiple ways you can do transformations in OpenRefine. A lot of the things that we do that are point and click in OpenRefine can also be done using these transformations. I'm going to close out of the database, out of that facet now. So just summarizing what we've looked at so far, you can alter data in OpenRefine based on specific instructions using the GREL expressions. We can preview our results of our GREL expressions by using that preview expression box. And we can expand the data editing functions that are already built into OpenRefine by building our own transformations. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can bring us back into the slide deck, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these data types that I keep mentioning. So the data types, there are multiple different data types that are recognized by OpenRefine, and understanding how these data types work can help you write a wider variety of transformations using GREL. So every piece of data in OpenRefine has a type, and the most common type is a string. So most of what we've been working with, everything we've been working with so far has been a string. It's text data. However, there are other data types available and transformations that you can convert data from one data type to another. So for example, or we're about to look at different examples here of converting a string to a date, and we can also convert a date back to a string. But there's also another data type in OpenRefine is Booleans, and we looked at these briefly last week when we were a Boolean is where it'll work true or false. We used that when we were looking at the duplicate facet and the blank facet, where again a true or false value is generated based on what's in a cell. And the numbers and dates we're going to spend a little more time on too. But looking closer at Booleans, I mentioned the Boolean is a binary value. It can either be true or false. And it can be used directly in OpenRefine cells, but more often you'll see Booleans used as part of transformations. So for example, this first transformation, value.contains and then in parentheses test. This will generate a Boolean value of true or false depending on if test appears in the cell. And test here is just standing in for whatever you might be trying to look for in a certain, whatever you're looking for in a certain string. Such tests can be combined with other GREL expressions to create more complex transformations. So for example, the GREL transformation if, and then parentheses value dot contains and test. This is the if is another function or another expression in OpenRefine. It actually takes 3 arguments. So this first one is it's the value contains test is asking what is the test or text that you're looking for, and then the second after the first comma we have test, and this will be the value to return if it is true. So if the test character or word appears is present, it's true, we would print test. And if test character or word is not present, that's the last argument or option in our parentheses. That would be it would print. We're telling it if it's false to print the original value. We'll look at an example of this, which will hopefully help you understand. But I'm going to go back to OpenRefine now to look at that example. Share. And we're going to look at the back at our mesh subjects heading column again. And you might have seen this before if you were following with Javier, that when we try to facet on this column, you'll get a choices total too many to display. And I think before Javier was doing this on the title column, OpenRefine can only do, we know that facets are used to group together common values, but OpenRefine limits the number of values that are allowed in a single facet to ensure that the software does not perform slowly or run out of memory. So if we create a facet where there are many unique values, so for example, it's telling us that there are 2,800 choices out of our 3,000 row data set, that is, the facet is very large and it could slow down the application, or OpenRefine, it just won't be able to create the facet. And rather than trying to push through and like trying to facet based on this, it wouldn't actually be as helpful. It's giving us this warning. But another way that we can look at our mesh subject headings, if we wanted to kind of extract from our subject headings different, use the subject headings to kind of extract different articles from our data set, we could use the Boolean, use our Boolean example. So for this, I'm gonna go to the drop down for our mesh subjects headings. And now this time we're not going to go to edit cells and transform. We're actually going to edit column. And here we're going to add a column that's based on this column. And this looks very similar to our expression when we were writing our transformations. But you'll see that the first thing it asks for, and this adding a column based on another column, it allows you to create a new column while preserving the old column. So instead of making changes to the actual subjects heading column, we're going to be doing a transformation that creates a new column based on that column. And I'm going to name this new column anesthesia. I can spell. Because I'm going to be using a Boolean to look for the term anesthesia. So I'm going to start typing in the expression box. Term that we're looking for, and you can see here that it's I'm doing just value.contains anesthesia, and it's giving me the true or false for each of these cells if the anesthesia appears or not. And we have to be exact in what we type in this here, like there can't be any spaces. Again, it's very tight, it's very case sensitive, space sensitive. But I actually, as we saw, we can also use this if function to kind of to create to add new values, or to give us just not just true and false, but to also tell us, we can actually modify what it will output. So I'm actually going to put include. So we have the first argument here, the value contains anesthesia. If that is true, we're going to tell it to include. We want to include that in our data set for later. And if it is not present, we're going to have it removed. We're going to remove. And this is just a label for us. It's not actually going to include or remove anything. But when I do that, you can see in our preview that it's going to, for each one, that where it was true before is now include, where it was false is now remove. I'm going to click OK. And that has now created a whole new column in my data set. That's, and now instead of before when I tried to facet the mesh subjects headings, I got too many results. But when I facet on the anesthesia column, now it's much more simplified. I can facet this column easily to see include. There's 2,300 articles, articles that have anesthesia as one of their subject headings, and 885 that do not. So this is this will bring us to our next practice question. We want you to try on your own. We want you to use the if and the contains function to create a new column, this time looking for pediatric in our subjects heading. I saw someone asked for the the last Grelix statement. It might be kind of small. Hopefully you can see it. I've opened the undo redo. It's if, yeah. I'd also copy it into the chat. Yeah, thank you, Javier. I'll go a little slower, hopefully.
You can also use under reactions, there is a reaction to slow down if you feel like we're going too fast. Just putting that out there for everybody.
Okay, I've seen in the chat people have put 1,160, and that is what I got as well. So I'm gonna show you now how to get that, or how we did that. So if we do the dropdown for a mesh subjects heading, we're once again gonna be creating a new column. So we're gonna do edit column and then add column based on this column. This new column I'm gonna just call pediatric because that's the term that I'm gonna be searching for. I'm going to type if value contains pediatric. I want to include if it is true. I want to remove if it is false. And you could just do the true and false here, but just for the sake of this exercise, I'm doing include and remove. And I can already see in my preview that it's picking it up for some. I click OK. Now I have a new column. It's pediatric next to my anesthesia column. And I can facet, do the text facet. And now this time I can see 1,160 articles have pediatric. And then as we're ending this exercise, you can also see that you can include here more than one facet. And now we can kind of combine these two, like now that we've extracted from the mesh subjects headings, if we wanted pediatric anesthesia is actually the term that we want to make sure we include in all of our, in this article search, then we can actually use our facets to narrow it down to those 939 records that have both in pediatric anesthesia and anesthesia. So I'm gonna stop sharing again. That's the end of this exercise, or this part of this exercise. And I'm gonna look at dates. So we've talked about strings, we've talked about booleans, now we're going to talk about dates. And why are dates so messy? That's really a question. If you can, you put us in the chat, what is today's date? How would you write today's date? And I'm seeing 2025-09-16, 9/16/2025, September 16, 2025, 9/16/25. And yeah, dozens of formats from countries, from businesses, everywhere. Everyone writes the date a little differently sometimes. So it's kind of easy to see how dates can quickly become one of the messier data types that we might work with. And OpenRefine can parse dates in many different, it has the built-in, we might have seen that one of the common transformations that's built in is toDate. And toDate works with the works when a date is formatted with the international standard, that ISO 8601, that year, 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day. But you can see on this screen on this slide, we have the many different characters and representations of how dates are written and parsed. So there's year, we have a lowercase y for month, an uppercase M, D. Can have an uppercase D is for a day in the year, whereas a lowercase d is for a day in the month. And so some of the operations and transformations that we're going to do, we actually need to transfer, we'll need to use these different characters, these different ways of representing the date to make those transformations. So we're going to look at specifying a date format, date formatting in grell expression, reformatting a date, and also our timeline facet. Let me go back to OpenRefine now. And we have two date columns in this data set. We have our date published and our date accessed. And as I mentioned before, like the lowercase, the uppercase, those are all, it's case sensitive, how we write the dates, or how dates are interpreted. And as we're moving and working to dates, I want to make sure I clear out any of my facets and filters. So I'm back at my full data set. And we're going to use that common date transformation on our two date columns. So for the date accessed, I'm going to do edit cells, common transforms to date. And when I did this, that actually transformed all 3,189 cells in our data set, which is great. And you'll see that now the dates are written in green. So again, this is OpenRefine it's now recognized by OpenRefine as a data type. You'll see the unique identifier, which is also another column in our data set, is also green because this is a number. These are the data type. Now, if I go to our date published and I do the same common transform to date, that time it transformed 929 cells to date. But that's not all of our data set. So you can already see
Christine?
Yeah?
So we're being asked if we can repeat that last step.
Sure. The common transform?
Yes, I believe that's the case.
Okay, so on our date published column, or drop down, we'll go to edit cells, common transforms to date. And when I did that, it's for me, it didn't change any cells because I had already converted, I'd already done that. So any cells that had been changed to date have already been changed. But we can see that there are clearly there are still cells that are not have not been converted to a date data type. So I'm going to So for our date published, we're going to have to do a little bit more. We're going to have to write an actual. We're going to have to do a more an actual transformation to convert some of these dates. So on our date published column, drop down to edit cells, transform, and this opens our transform box again. And we're going to again use the same. We're using the same function to date. We're wanting to convert these strings to a date, but we have to specify the format that the date is written in. So I can see that some of these values are written with the month fully written out. So I'm going to use the notation that we saw on the one slide on our slide, where month is, or M is for month written out, Y is for the year. So that will cover these, the ones that we can see. If you actually scroll through the data set, you'll see that some are written the other way, where they have the year, a 4-digit year, and then the month spelled out. And then some are just a year, and I'm going to just put 4-digit year. And so this is going to convert to date, this column, and it's going to look for formats, dates written in this format, and convert those to our international standard date format. I can wait a moment just because that's a longer expression. When I do this, it's going to all convert them to the standardized date format. So I'm going to click OK. And that converted 2,000, so this transformed 2,247 cells in our date column, which is great, but it's still not the full 3,189 of our rows. It is the majority, and it may be the best that we can do for the moment. If we open up the text facet, oh, I don't look at the text facet. I should have done that before I converted it, but what we can actually do now is that since we have converted these, we can look at them on the timeline facet. So we looked last week at our text facet. There's a numeric facet, a scatter plot facet, but now we can look at our timeline facet. So when we open our timeline facet, you'll see here, wow, I'm kind of surprised. So it's showing that 3,176 rows are registered as time, so they're registering as actual dates, and then 13 are not time. If we looked at just those records, we would see that there's some that are written with there's multiple a span of months instead of 1 month and a date. These are different ways that you write a date, but they're not actually recognized by just saying winter 2006. That does not actually giving us a date or a day or a month. I want to just make sure, because I don't want people to get lost. There's some errors people are getting when they use the to date. It could be that you're missing the quotation, could be missing one of the characters. Yeah. But so our date published, we now can use the timeline facet on that column, and we can also use the timeline facet on our date accessed. And you can kind of see some different trends over time with this facet. That's something that's useful about when you have actual data to be able to look at it in this form. And we can also narrow down the time frame of our data. So if we only wanted to look at 1 year of what was most recent, what was accessed in the last 6 months, we could narrow down. You can adjust this using these sliders. You can narrow down what time frames you're looking at. So we have another practice question that I'm going to reset reset your facet. You can also reset the facets back so that you're showing everything again. We have another practice question to to do the timeline facet. We're going to look at how many articles were accessed between 2022 and how many articles were published between 2003 and 2013. And yeah, I'm seeing in the chat, if you were having trouble with the to-date expression, the M's are capital and there were actually 4 M's. And then there were 4 Y's, but the Y's are lowercase. Are people able to use the timeline facet? Can I get a thumbs up if you were able to? Oh, sorry, I had there's 2 questions, our latest practice questions. It may be because the date published column has less, the dates are even more messy in that column. It might be just better to look at the date accessed column. If you are able to run the timeline facet timeline. Oop, now I've opened it twice. Just because the data in that column was cleaner. So but in the interest of time, I'm going to go and show you how to find that. So you can slide these sliders. We're looking just for articles that were accessed between 2022 and 2023. We can set the different years using the sliders. If I slide this from January 1st, 2022 to December 16, 2023, I get 1,546 rows. And the published one is very similar, but also when I was trying to use the timeline facet before, sometimes it was crashing. So again, it can be, the timeline facet is great to use when you have like good clean date data, but that's not always going to be the case. But something that, but one of the last things I wanted to show you is if we, as we're looking at this data set, we have 3,000, closing my facet, 3,189 articles to look through, and say the year that the articles were published is one of the most important factors on if I want to include that article in my data set or not, then there's another way we can pull out the years that the articles were published. So on our date published column, we're going to go again to edit columns, and we're going to create a new column, and we're going to add a column based on this column again, like we did before. And this time I'm going to call this year published. And we're going to use this we're going to use the same function we used before, our get function. We're going to again get the first 4 characters from our column, and this is again it's extracting the first 4 characters that are in that column, which for us is going to be mostly dates. It's going to be mostly the year because that's how the year was written. So now I have a new column that it's no longer a date column. You can see it's in the text is in black now instead of green, but this means I can do the text facet on it. And when I do the text facet, I actually have now it looks like a nice clean list of years, the years that the articles in this data set were published. So You'll notice there were some that did not get fully, that are still not actually years, but when we look at these, we can see that there was, we can actually manually just edit these to then have the right year. And again, I know we mentioned this last week, but when you're working in OpenRefine, you're not actually changing the data that you started with, but this is like using creating a new column and then making edits to that column can be another way to clean the data if you don't want to lose some of the information that was already in your data set. So yeah, so this again, this lets us look at the years that these articles were published. We can also look at the different. We can look at our, we've created using transformations. We've created new columns that allow us to know more about what's in our data set. I think I have time to show you the last thing I wanted to show you is just looking at the date access column. I mentioned before that you can convert a string to a date. You can also convert a date back to a string. So if this date access column, it's great that I can now use the timeline facet, but I also want to be able to read the dates that are in this column. I can create a column, a new column again, that's based on this column. And we can do value to string. Or, sorry, I forgot to name our column. It's our formatted date accessed to string, and here again, because it's written, this time when I'm using the toString function, it's going to convert it to a string, and this time I want it to actually write out the date for me in a different form. In this form using the date, then the month spelled out, and then the year, the 4-digit year. And again, that's just, I've added a column that's now going to be a string column, but it's a date that's a little bit more readable. And I'm sorry, I went a little too fast, but we're getting to the end of the class. Someone asked to see what the GREL expression for the year published was, and that is, nope, I don't want to undo that. It's value.get parentheses 0, 4 parentheses. And thank you, Javier, put it in the chat as well. But that brings us to the end of the session, actually almost to the end. I forgot we didn't export our data. So as I mentioned before, like if you, now that we've created these new facets, and if when we go to export our data, maybe we only want to look at articles from the last 5 years. So I could use this newly created text facet of the year published. I could include just, not the last 5 years, but I could include just the years 2015 to 2020. When I go to export my data, it will export just these 1,361 rows. And again, this is good if you're like trying to narrow down what's in your data set, if that's like the purpose of like what the cleaning that you're doing, or if we wanted to include just articles then or from, how to select more than 1 year, sorry. In our facet menu, you'll see that there's edit and include, and if you click include, you can include multiple years, multiple facets. But I just want to show you, like if we export this now as I could export as an Excel.xlsx, which is the file format we started with. It'll have just that. It'll have just these records in that data set. As Javier mentioned also, you can also export your project file, the OpenRefine project archive to file. This will save your entire OpenRefine project, including all of your undo and redo steps, all the history, all the steps that you've taken on that data set. And that's what we saw in the beginning, where you can import I could export this as, when I export it as a project file, it's a zipped file with this file extension .targz. I don't know if this will open fast enough, but I have when I look at my I'm not sure if it'll share it, but I have if you export I have to share my screen again. This is the export from what I just exported from OpenRefine, and you'll see it only has, when I scroll down to the bottom of it, it only has the 1,361 records that were from the years 2015 to 2020. But I'm going to stop sharing and go to our last slide was to thank you, and also we are happy to answer questions. So if there's anything, and I can also pull OpenRefine back up if there's anything that you missed and that we need to go back to. Someone asked if there's a cheat sheet for values and codes used. I don't know if you mean just the ones that we use today. I know that there's the documentation on the OpenRefine's user manual has a lot of cheat sheets. We are also going to be sending out the materials from the class today, which will include some of the functions that we use today, as well as the different expressions that we were writing.
Thanks for watching. This video was produced by the network of the National Library of Medicine. Select the circular channel icon to subscribe to our channel, or select a video thumbnail to watch another video from the channel.